G'day and welcome to David Joshua Ford Live. This is episode 127, and on today's show we're taking a look at a real show workflow for DJF Live version 5.0. So this is going to take a pre-existing pack and we're going to customize it a bit for your individual show. So I want to start off by looking at customizing buttons so you can do individual actions, and then also an automation flow so that you can take a show and build a sort of sequential run of show into it, and you don't have to think so much about random buttons everywhere, but something that already has a structure to it. So to kick off it, let's start by chatting about customizing buttons and also just particular parts of the workflow. I wanted to go into, just sort of show you when I come into this studio, what is it that I'm actually sort of changing and setting up per show, and how I sort of run the show. So one of the first ones, which isn't actually changing a button, but it is setting up a camera angles that I have for these PTZ cameras. I've got this camera 1, which is looking at me from a teleprompter, and then I've got an overhead one as well. And sometimes I need to change that. For the most part, the studio is set, so it's, you know, this close up here is one shot, or I can go to a wide shot if you want to see more of the desk and gesticulations and that kind of stuff. So that's usually pretty set, but sometimes either the cameras get bumped or the desk is moved, or more likely I might have actually have a new piece of equipment. So for example, my overhead camera here this is a full shot of the desk, and let's just say I'm talking about the Rodecaster and I've got to work out a shot for this. I might start by coming into my Canon presets for camera 2, and I'm on a full desk at the moment, and I'll come into a close-up because I know I've sort of pre-set that one and it's sort of similar to what I'm looking for, and then I can just reposition and move out a bit and maybe change the angle and get this positioned where I want for that shot. And then you won't be able to see this just yet, but I will hold down button number 4, so I've saved that. I'll show you what that looks like now. Is I can hit button preset 3 is called close-up. That's a close-up of my Stream Deck, and then I've got preset 4 here. So now if I press that, it's going to show me that Rodecaster, and I can come back to number 3. So I might also want to change the name here, and within the DJF Canon PTZ system, you can use Google Sheets, and so these are all names that are pulled from Google Sheets. So I can bounce over to here, and once you've connected your Google Sheets into Companion, then you can set up a page that is just capital PTZ is what it is here, and then columns A to F are the 6 cameras, and then the presets 1 to 36 are the 36 names. And so I can come into camera 2, which is column B, into row 4, and you'll see this 4. Notice over here this is 4. If I delete it, it will update in a second. You take like a second or two. And I can just call this like RCV for Rodecaster Video, like so. And now when I come, when I look over here, this is going to be updated. I'm just going to jump back into this shot here, RCV. So now I have my close-up of the Stream Deck, and I can hit RCV for this shot. And so that just gives me a button that's really easy to identify, and I don't have to think about like what's preset for. I can quite easily update the name through Google Sheets without having to go into the back end of that. And it makes me just be able to change a lot of things on the fly. So speeds up the workflow a lot. The next thing is auxiliary routing. So a lot of the time this studio is set up for live streaming, and so in my teleprompter and confidence monitor, I have the program view, and I have a multi-view confidence monitor down here, which I can show you in, where are we? This shot here. Let me just get over that. So this is my teleprompter, which has the program, and then a multi-view for confidence monitor. And so when I'm live streaming, I generally want the program in here just so that I have eye contact to the audience with the main camera there, and confidence that I am, like what I'm putting to air is what I'm expecting to put to air as I'm sort of talking and switching. But then there's other times where I might do a pre-record and I want to do a script, and so that's where I might put a different source into that, the teleprompter or the confidence monitor. And so that's where under Stream Deck, if I come over to my shot page, I can very quickly route what's going into that. So what you're looking at here is mix effect layer 1 is on Canon 2, and I can switch like that. But then I can also jump over to the auxiliary routing buttons. So they're in under ATEM, auxiliary, and then for my 2ME constellation, I've got 12 inputs here. So 1 to 8 is just ISO recording into my ATEM Extreme, and then I'm using 9 is the web presenter. So if I change this, then you would see something different reflect on your screen. But then I've got 3 sort of floor monitors. You know, one's the teleprompter, the other one's the floor monitor, which is actually above me, and then a confidence monitor, which is on the just below the teleprompter. So these are my 3 outputs that I can change the sources of them. At the moment, I have program in the teleprompter, and I have multi-views 1 and 2 in the floor and confidence monitor. But there are times when, for example, if I'm pre-recording something and I want to do a script, I might want to put a computer desktop into the teleprompter rather than the program. So I don't have to actually come into this page. I can just do that from my shot page here. And so I can go from, instead of switching, I can just select teleprompter, and then I can choose a source. You know, so I could put a camera into it if I wanted to, or I could put in M16 is my MacBook Pro 16. So let me see if I can bring you up the right shot. So if you have that shot, now that I've got actually I've got a shot set up here. Where is it? This one. All right, so you can see what I'm doing here. So normal switching on the mix effect layer, then selecting teleprompter, and instead of program, I could put my MacBook screen in there that you saw before in terms of showing the PTZ spreadsheet there, or I could put it back to program. I could also put in multi-view however I wanted to do it. And likewise on the confidence monitor, I could put in like a full screen, you know, desktop if I want there, or I've got one of the 2 multi-views, or I could do the whole program confidence monitor under there. So it just allows me to very quickly change how I'm setting up my studio here. For the most part, I've got the program in the teleprompter so that my eyeline is always on what's going to air. And then below it in here is, let me jump over to ME1 and I can show you on M2. This is from my Mac Mini. This has got a screen output where I've got various clocks going on here, and then I've also got a spreadsheet which is telling me what is coming up next in terms of what I'm going to be looking at. So next up we have the SuperSource layouts. So let me jump over there, and now we have our SuperSource layouts. So the next thing that I often want to customize is some sort of SuperSource layouts. So this allows you to add a source input to the presets that come in my DJF 5 package. I'll come over to, let me come back to my scene button here, and I've got to get back to this one, and over here, let me bring that button back. Okay, so from the home page, I'm going to come into ATEM, and that's where under SuperSource, I've got a bunch of presets here that I can sort of rearrange the screens. So for example, this is the one that I often work with, but I can press a whole bunch of different presets to rearrange what I'm looking at. And the way that I've built this out is 1, 2, and 3 are sort of treated like camera sources. So imagine like people on a podcast or something. And then box 4 is usually a screen, like something you're presenting from a computer screen. So it's 16 by 9, and it's usually like a bigger space. And there's different layouts that you might want to have in here. You can see box 3 here is actually empty. That's more of like a ticker bar down the bottom. But I can put that full screen, or I can come back to that one. Excuse me. But when you get this, it's not going to change the inputs, and so you might want to flick between inputs, and so I'm going to show you how to do that now. If I come back over to this layout, I'm going to come into Companion, and I'll just open this up. Excuse me, getting a dry throat. Okay, so we're going to go to Buttons, and I'm going to go to SuperSource. You can just go SS like this. And on page 17, you can see I've got these super sources here, and I can just Command C to copy it, and then I'll come back to page 3 is my scene page. And I've filled up my page here, so I'm actually just going to work over here on this canvas here, and I can just paste that in there. So now I've got a copy of this button, and I don't have to worry about deleting or messing up what's back on the SuperSource page. And to get to that, I can go to back home and go to my scene page. If you're just starting out, you'll probably have space here, but if you fill that up, then you can just select 1, 2, or 3 for different quadrants. So this is like quadrant 1, 2, 3, and 4. Oh, sorry, hang on. 1, 2, 3. So I guess it's 1, 2, 3, 4, but the submenus are 1, 2, and 3. So now if I press number 2, you'll see that these are the buttons that are that I'm working with over here. And I'll just start with these two. So I've got 2 variations here. I'm going to shift, actually I'll press on here so you can see. So I've got this layout and this layout. So when I press between them, it's not actually changing the sources, it's just changing the graphical layout of these boxes. Or if I click over to this one, it's actually removing box 2, and it's just having box 1 and 4 in this shot, and coming back to this one. So we can change the input of this to be something else. Let's start with this one. You'll see there's multiple tabs here. These are depending on if you're working with ATEM 1, 2, or 3, and SuperSource 1 or 2. So most people just start with step 1 is going to be ATEM 1, SuperSource 1, and you can just see that we've turned off box 3, and then we've set parameters for boxes 1, 4, and 2. And so we just need to come down here, and we're going to go ATEM 1, and we're going to set SuperSource box source. And so I might want to change this to box 1. I'm going to put, let's just mix it up. So I'm going to put camera 2 in there, and we can just duplicate that. And then I could put box 2 could be camera 1. And then duplicate this one, and we go box 4 is going to be, instead of my MacBook Pro, I could put in my, where are we? My Mac Mini screen output that I was showing you before. And so now when I press that, it's updated all of these inputs. I can also just grab this button and paste it to below there, and I can change these ones back. So let me see if I can go back to this one. Okay, so I've just duplicated this button, pasted it here, and now I can come down here and make another version of it. So you can make so many versions depending on what you want. Canon 1, Canon 2, and then this one is going to be a MacBook Pro 16, like so. And so now when I press this one, I'm already on that, and I can switch between that one, and I can change the box sources like that. And it's always going to bring those sources back in there. So that's just one way of like building different looks and making sure that you have what you need in there for what you're presenting. Similarly, we can do the upstream key presets. So this is adding source inputs to the upstream key preset layouts. Very similar to the SuperSource that we were just talking about, but this is for the upstream key. And so what that looks like is on this one, if we jump back over to ATEM, we're going to go to key. what have I put in there? Oh, I did something wrong there. Key. Oops. Hang on a second. Upstream key. There we go. And under preset, sorry, I pressed the wrong button over here. Let me just go to camera 2. There we go. All right, so under the presets, you can, this little circle, you can move this around. But you might want to change what's in there for different looks. So for example, I'm going to work with this circle for my face on a circle for this look, and then I might also want like a 16:9 screen on the other side, as I was showing you before, for like putting the Stream Deck in this little box, rather than having my face. And so we can copy those two. If I go back to, let's go back to my SuperSource Layout so you can see what I'm doing here. I've got, if I go to key, so K-E-Y, go to ATEM1 key, and I've basically gotten this button, Command-C to copy it, same with this one, but starting with this one, going over to page 3 and over to here, and then I'm pasting it here, and I've pasted this one here as well, just ahead when I was setting up. So now these buttons, if I go out of here to my scene page, and I'm going to come back to this overlay. So now I've got circle and square, but I want to change these so that on this look it has the camera, and then on this look it actually has the Stream Deck and the studio camera that I was showing you before. So let's start over here, and we're going to come back to here. Okay, so I've selected this circle. Again, you'll see there's a ton of tabs here, which is basically the layering of all these 3 ATEMs and all of the possible upstream key potentials. So there's, you know, what do we got? 8, 16, 4, 6. So the first one is going to be ATEM 1, upstream key 1. So I would say the majority of people are probably just working with that. But if you were working with, like, you know, ATEM 2, you know, key 3, you would find that corresponding tab further down. All right, so let's start with this one. Step 1, we've set the type to pattern. This is pulling in certain parameters here that I've built in a certain way so that it works across a whole lot of scenarios using local variables, which I won't go into. But essentially, these actions are setting the shape, but they're not setting the input. So all I have to do is come down the bottom here. You can search for it in here, or you can actually just click this button here, and you go to ATEM, and you have a long list of things, and you would go to upstream key inputs, set inputs, and just add that one in. And so I'm saying ATEM 1, ME 1, key 1, and I want my fill source to be Canon. And let's just also put in a background. So we're going to go program, ATEM 1, set program input to camera 2. All right, so now when I press this, it should, oh, we also need to go, let me bring back here. We also need to say upstream key on, upstream key set on air. Okay, so we need to actually turn on the upstream key, like so. All right, so I've turned on the upstream key. It's given it this shape of that, and we've also then defined we want camera 1 as the input on this, and we want the program, which is the background in this shot, to be camera 2. And so that is that look that we've set up. But you'll notice if I click this button here, it's not actually changing the input. It's more just changing the shape. And so that's where we need to come into our second button and change that one So again, we're just working with step 1 here, and we can leave all of these parameters, which are setting the they're setting the shape, and I'll come down here, and I want to start with the program. So the program input is going to be that studio camera that which I think is on Mini 3, this one. And what else are we going to do? We've got the upstream key is going to be set on air, which actually is already here, so I can just put that one in, and it'll be in now recently used ones, and then I can go upstream key set inputs to Canon 1. I think that's right. Did I do this right? If we go, whoop. No, I didn't. Oh, sorry, Canon 2 is what I wanted. That's what I wanted. All right, so now I've built a look where I can show you what I'm seeing, but I also wanted to give you a close-up view of what's happening on the Stream Deck. And now that is a button that I can use on my profile, and that's where I built like a, where are we? A similar one over here that I was using in the show. So that's basically the one that I've built there. And now when I click on this one, it is bringing that back over for this look. So I can switch between showing you the studio or showing you what's happening on the Stream Deck and keeping my face on air. So hopefully that helped with just some of the ways that you might set up a button and some of the ways that I set up the show. All right, so let's go to, next up, we're taking a look at the automation flow. So beyond individual buttons, which are useful to just sort of recall different looks at different times when you're sort of talking throughout a show, you might want to build an automation flow so that you can ahead of time work out what your show is going to look like and what it's going to do, and then you can just execute it without having to sort of find all the pieces and put it back together again. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about automation. It's sort of a pre-scripted run of show that has a lot of technical cues in it. The way that I do this for every show now is I use Google Sheets, and I build out a list of all of my run of show items. And then related to that, I also can trigger cues in Companion that are going to do technical things like, you know, switch the camera to a certain angle, or change a PTZ preset, or change the lighting, microphones on and off. So it's those two things of, you know, the soft concept of like, what am I talking about and what are the different segments? And then I can pull that text from the spreadsheet and put it onto air. Like what you're looking at now with this graphic here is text from a Google spreadsheet that I have sat down and be like, what do I want to talk about? I want to talk about this, 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 and one section is going to be Google Sheet lists and cues. And then I've got this subtext of that you can quickly build a run of show and import the on-screen graphics, which is what we're looking at. And for me, that means that I don't have to do these two steps of like writing out a show and then building a show. It's like in writing out the show, I've already built the show, and that's the speed efficiency there. So let's take a look at how to do that. So what you would do is connect the DJF profile to Google Sheets. Once you've connected to Google Sheets, then you can just come in here and create a sheet called list in capital letters and then a number. So you can have multiple ones of these. You could have as many as you want. List 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you would just, within Companion, you're directing it to a particular list. So if you've got multiple versions of a show or different shows, you can have that all built ahead of time and then just direct it to what you want to present for that. So for this one, I'm just on list 1, and I also have a page called show. These are all used in caps. That's the main thing, is like these page names need to be exactly that in terms of show and list with a number, no spaces in there. But the list basically is 4 columns and then however many cues that you want to have. And so column A is the header. So this is like each segment that we're working through. I've got like a pre-roll here. I've got some of my big segments in terms of the show opener, parts 1 and 2. And then in there I've got categories that we're working through. Column B is pulling additional sort of text description if you want to have smaller text to sort of expound on what you're putting in the show header. Column C is a place to put a web link if you want to do that, and then the DJF profile will actually pull from that and it'll stamp it into the YouTube chat and also into I'm saying the YouTube chat, and then also the chapters and that kind of stuff. So you can, you know, if you're trying to talk about, which actually I did not update these ones, I should have deleted that. Let me delete this one. This is from last show. So that would have stamped in there. I can delete that. But when I run a queue, it will pull in those graphics, and on the back end of that, it's also creating a YouTube chapter marker which has that web link. So it just makes it much more, like if you're talking about a particular product, it'll put the product on screen and you can talk about it, and what's happening for viewers is that in the chat, you have a link that they can follow. So it makes it much more dynamic for them. And then on, where are we? This column D is if you put a number in here between 1 and 24, then you're going to be pulling in one of these queues, 1 to 24 here. So you can see I'm doing 1, 2, 3, and then I'm not doing any queues, and then I'm doing 4, 6, 7, 8, 24. So down here is like stop all. But I've just got this kind of my technical cues in terms of pre-show, starting the show, parts 1, 2, 3 if I need it, and then a goodbye and a wrap button. So that's the technical things that on Companion are being pulled in. So if we jump over to there on page 5, you'll see here I've got pre-show, and this is where I've put in all of my first look things. So this is like setting my program preview for the ATEM, setting the cameras onto a trace, muting the microphone, but starting show music, setting up other cameras and lights, and like all that stuff goes into my first look of my show, and that's the pre-roll that you see before the show actually goes live. And then show start, you know, that unmutes the microphone, it switches to camera 1, it does a maneuver, lighting changes, we've got like lights fade up, all that kind of stuff. So that's all within these cues, and then part 1 sort of stops the background music and I move into the content of the show, and then at the other end, in terms of goodbye and wrap, that's, you know, starting the music and muting the microphone to get out. So these are the technical actions that I've placed into these cues that are then being triggered by the Google Sheets, the Google Sheet here. And so if I don't have a number in there, then it's going to run an alternate queue, which you'll find under here. If you just on page 5, if you just go left, you'll see user actions for list. This will be blank when you get your profile, but you can add in here what you want the list to do if it's blank. For me, I just have it that it goes to this shot, which is telling the camera to come into preset 3 on a close-up, and it's switching the ATEM to input 1, and it's also telling H2R to put to pull the text from the Google Sheets on for that queue that I'm on, and to display it on screen. So, and then that is the sort of subheader look that I've built within that. Whereas when I have the cues, they look much different. So these cues to start a show or different chapters are more like lighting cues and, you know, bigger changes that I'm making. So that's the alternate way of presenting technical cues in relation to the Google Sheet. I've just formatted this in a way. So for example, like, you know, I'm pulling show exclamation mark B2, which means I'm pulling from over here. So I've got a sheet called show, in which I type out episode title, part 1 and part 2, and then that is automatically pulled into my list. This is all about efficiency and not having to type more things. So once I've put in my show details, then that is also pulling that into into H2R. So in H2R, under variables, you'll see real show, workflow, customizing buttons, automation, Google Sheets, all that kind of stuff. So what Companion is doing is, as I advance, it is pulling this Google Sheets data and putting it into H2R graphics and then displaying that on screen. So you've got this source of knowledge, which is Google Sheets, and that's Companion is pulling that in and using that for on-screen graphics. It's using it for the Google chat, and it's also stamping YouTube chapter markers, and it's also logging it as well back to Google Sheets. So there's a lot of flow of metadata that's going on there, but I don't have to type that into each box. All I need to do is really, and then I can just copy this and paste this into the YouTube live stream when I'm setting that up, is the way that I sort of set that up. So on the list, when I am then on this list page, I can actually move forwards and backwards through this. So you'll see here, I've got, or just to differentiate, if you want to turn off lists, you can go back to your home page, and then you can put it on list mode or queue mode. So if I put it on queue mode, then over here, when I go forwards and backwards, I'm highlighting what queue will be next based on just locally on Companion. So this is turned off the Google Sheets integration. If I go to turn list mode back on, this is now controlling from Google Sheets. And so even though I can execute buttons from here, what I'm actually controlling here is the Google Sheets list. Where am I? Come through here, camera settings, AUX routing, SuperSource, Upstream Key, I did that, Upstream Key Presets, automation flow, Google Sheet lists, and clocks. So that would be the next one that I execute. And so as I'm pressing this button, that is where it is pulling the next queue from this spreadsheet. It's also putting in, which I showed you on my Mac screen, which I have up here, which is this spreadsheet, which just pulls in a big version of whatever's coming up next as the queue. And so you can it's a very easy way to like put that on a laptop somewhere, or put it into a teleprompter or some confidence monitor to sort of show what the next queue is to a presenter. So that's something that's built in there as well. And this, the DJF 5 comes with this Google Sheets template. So this formatting is pre-built. Same with the PTZs and the this next type thing. Some of this is just formatting, but it does kind of like lay it out in terms of understanding what is going to be in here. Like you can see, I'm logging this. All right, come back to lists. All right, let's move on to the next segment, and you can see I can trigger this from this button. Is the same as this one on my Stream Deck, and so it's going to run the. If you see on here, clocks doesn't have a queue number in here, so it's going to run the alternate button that I made over here. Remember this one, user actions. So because there's no button that it's triggering here, it's going to run this sequence, which is pressing page 3, this button here, which was the close-up button of the camera. So there's stuff back there. Let's go back to page 3. This one here, it's saying press this button, which is just a shorthand way of being like, hey, I've already built a preset, which is, this button is putting camera 1 on air. It's putting the camera into drive time mode and saying do a 3-second maneuver, go to preset number 3 in 3 seconds, and is putting on the upstream key is turned off. So just because, you know, it could be on, could be off, depending on what I'm coming from. So I just want to make sure that's off if it's not already. Same thing with upstream key 2, turning that one off. And also I'm resetting one of my Visca cameras, one of the behind the scenes cameras here. So, which is not on screen, but that's just sort of getting it ready for other shots. So that's what that button is pressing when I press this next button. So it's going to action that, it's going to wait 200 milliseconds, and then it's going to pull on a H2R graphics to show that on-screen thing, and then it's going to wait. Well, I've turned this off, depending on how I want to operate, but you could have it so after 10 seconds it automatically takes it away. I was getting into the habit of like reading long bits of text, and so I just turned it off, and then I would manually take that off screen. So let's press this now and move on to the next segment. So clocks is talking about keeping track of the key show milestones. So on the Stream Deck, if you go back to, where are we? Under the, what's this one doing? Is that one freezing up? Why is that freezing up? Come on. Is that a network thing? Or is that a computer thing? All right, I'm gonna jump over to SuperSource here, and we'll go to surfaces, make sure it might be a, where are we? Emulator 1. Okay, let's do it this way. I'm not sure if, I think maybe the companion satellite is freezing up. I'll have to look into that. All right, so under the home screen, we're going to go to clock, and this is where we got these pre-roll clocks here. So 4 clocks for a certain time of like big anchor points in your show, which is pre-roll, getting everything up and going, start show, which is when the actual content starts, ending that content, and then wrap is like ending the whole live stream. And these are, if you think about like the run of show that we were building before, that's more about camera looks that you can rehearse and do over and over again. So you can go back to first positions and step through your show and sort of practice how that's going to look. But you don't, within that, you don't want to be like starting your YouTube live stream or those types of things, or starting recording or whatever within that workflow. So you want to separate that out. And that's where these would sit into these buttons. And you can, under show, these are the actual buttons here. And if you hold them for half a second, they will execute. There's a half a second long press on it, so you don't accidentally like, you know, start or stop a show. And you can also put these auto pre-roll buttons. You can turn it on or off here, or if you're on the clock page, you can just select these and it'll highlight. And so when it's highlighted, it's showing that, like this countdown that's going here, it's going to execute the wrap automation flow when it hits 0, or you can turn it off and it won't do that. So I use this a lot for particularly my pre-roll. And you can see this is counting up because this is 43 minutes past the pre-roll. This for me helps that I can take a mental load off of starting the show and just focus on rehearsing and, you know, troubleshooting things or working out chat, all that kind of stuff. And I can also change that easily under the clock presets. I'll just turn this one off. Under clock presets, if I change, these are just some that I've built here, but you could go in and change the times. So for example, I started at 2 o'clock today, but if just say I wanted to start at 3 o'clock, I would click that. And now you can see that my pre-roll is starting at 5 minutes to 3. The show's starting at 3 o'clock on the dot. The show's ending at 4 o'clock, and at 4:02, the wrap sequence will execute, which is, you know, like stopping YouTube and stopping the streaming and stuff. There's also like a segment clock if you wanted to sort of count down each segment, which is available there. But this really just keeps me on track as well, because that screen that I showed you before in terms of, let me see if I can click on the right thing here. Go shot and M2. This on my confidence monitor is showing me, you know, the topic I'm going to talk about next, but you see that there's a copy of the clock page here, so I can see my current time of day. I go, okay, 14:40, I've got 20 minutes or less to get out of here. And then I can just keep track of, like, I've got, actually these clocks are wrong because I went back to, let me just get back to here, because I've moved that clock. So let's reset that clock. We're coming to clock, and instead of clock presets, we're gonna go to reset to our 2 o'clock show. Let me do that. That makes more sense now. And so now I can see that I've got 20 minutes left. So I'm always, whenever ideally I'm doing the show at the same time every week, but sometimes I can't, and so I have to change that, and it is just an easy way for me to update those clocks, have that visual feedback, and also change when these automatic sequences are going to run. And so these clocks are going to trigger these show elements. So let's jump over to that segment. And so we're talking about show triggers. This is enabling you to automate starting and stopping a show rather than having to manually think up all of the different things that you need to do. So we're going to go into, where are we? We're going to go into here, into buttons. So on the show page, so on page 4, this is where this pre-roll button actually lives in terms of what gets triggered by it. So you can manually start it too, which is what I did today, rather than automating the start time 5 minutes before. I didn't have it armed, so because I was, needed a little bit more time to get ready. And so I manually pressed it, held that down, and I'll step you through what's going on in this button. When you, the press and the short release are empty on purpose so that if you press them, like, it's not going to actually trigger anything. You have to hold it down intentionally for half a second to make it run. But this will be mostly blank when you get it, because you're gonna have to put in what you want to do yourself, but I'll step you through what I've got. What you will find in there, and it says like keep this action, is this show variable is going to be set to pre-roll, and all that's doing really is giving you visual feedback. So the button will become like wait, like that, and it just tells you that there are things processing, like there's actions that are running, because this particular one can take like 25 seconds to get the show up and running. So that's what that button is doing, is like feedback. And then it's also releasing the trigger, which relates to the automated trigger, because the automated trigger presses it, but this one will release it. So those two stay there, and then all these actions are things you would add in there, and then there's one last one at the end which says show on, and you keep that one in there. But between those ones, this is all you. All right, so what have I got? For my show, what I have is an internal button press action to press on my queue page, button 10, which is my pre-show button. So I'm basically saying go to this page and press this, like my first look button. So rather than having to type out all of those first look actions, remember I had all these ones here that I was practicing and going over and over again. Actually, it's down here. These are all the actions that are my first look of the show. I didn't quite explain before, but you can, there's 3 different sets here. I'm on set 2, and set 1 would load this quadrant into this skin in terms of what shows up on the Stream Deck. You see if I click down set 3, there's actually no cues in there because all of these buttons are empty over here. But I've built out my show in these 24 buttons here, and so that is, if I click on set 2, that is what is now loaded and actioning. So my start show button is saying press this button, and then this button is pressing whatever show I've got loaded. So there's a couple of cascading things there. The benefit is that you can have different shows, maybe you got like different church services and you need different workflow, and you can build those different looks and then just switch between them depending on what you want to execute. So I am executing all these actions are sort of, like downstream of over here. Once this button is either pressed manually or automatically runs based on the time of the clock that has been set. So, okay, so now I've got set the raw value of the variable YouTube chat row to 1. So I'm just sort of resetting a lot of parameters that I want for the show. So this chat row here is like sort of inserting comments here into the chat. And so see, I'm on chat row 3. That action is basically pulling it back to 1 so that it's ready to be used. Preroll. Same with the sheet list row. It's actually set to 2 because when I did the pre-show, it's already run, so I want it on 2. So the sheet list row of the Google Sheets list is set to 2. Reloading everything from YouTube just to get all those stats in. For some reason today I didn't bring in those stats, not quite sure why. I'll have to look into that. And then I'm setting the file name based on the YouTube name. This has been really handy for me because it means that when I go to my hard drive, I've got all of my show recordings and it's organized by date, pulled from the internal clock, and then the YouTube name. But you can see here I've set up an if statement because there were some instances where if, like today, where the YouTube is not connected to it, the value was NA, and NA in the ATEM would stop it from recording. So I had 1 or 2 times where I was like, hey, why isn't this recorded? And it's because it had this NA variable. So what I'm saying here is, if it's true that the YouTube show 0, index 0, the first one in there, is NA, not available, then set the file name recording of ATEM2 to, and then this is pulling internal date and time, internal date and time. So if I'm saying it's not available, just put in the internal date and time. Whereas if it's not NA, meaning it's functional, I'm getting that variable through and it's good, then you can set the file name using, again, the internal date and time, but also space YouTube unfinished is the title of the YouTube broadcast. And so it means when I look down my hard drive, I don't just have a bunch of dates, although that's useful at least. It's better than just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because at least then I have a sense of like what date it was on and I can go back and find things more easily. But having a show name just makes it much more easier of like, oh, I was talking about how to like set up a show, and makes it much easier to organize that. Timestamp, start a session. I've turned this one off at the moment. This is just logging. I don't really use that now because Google Sheets is there's much more functionality in Google Sheets, and so I can do all the logging into Google Sheets, and so I don't really need timestamp. It's just kind of, I've still got it there because I think it's useful if for some reason Google Sheets wasn't connected, then it's sort of a backup of if you need to log all the data. But I honestly in the last year or two haven't, I think it just gets logged. I don't even look at it. So I actually turned that off at the moment. Okay, so now we've got ATEM2 start recording, web presenter, start streaming, and then I've got this wait command of 15 seconds because I've found that if I just go straight on, then the start the broadcast gets lost, and so I want to give YouTube time to buffer, so I've given it 15 seconds to start receiving video before I then have this companion's YouTube command go live, and so this is actually what is starting the broadcast on the YouTube page from within this sequence. So you can see why the button needs to say wait, because I've up to 15 seconds of things executing Then I've got two TP-Link power switches, so these are like the Wi-Fi plugs, and I'm turning off the room fan. I'm also turning off I've got my rack fan on a separate circuit, and I turn that off just while I'm live streaming because the rack is like right next to my microphone, and I just don't want that in there. I wouldn't do that all day because I think it needs to keep running, but you know, for an event or something, my microphone's not going to be right next to the rack, but for in here, I've got that on there. Then I've got a internal run shell path command in here, OSA script, which is tell the application, which is Mac's shortcuts events, to run the shortcut named turn live streaming focus on. And so within Apple's shortcuts, I've been able to build a shortcut that basically changes the focus mode of my account. And so because that's across this Mac, which is showing you this desktop screen, my iPad, which is often on screen for bringing up the chats, or my iPhone, which I use as a little remote control. All these devices are on the same account, and so I can say, hey, put it into a mode that I've called live streaming, which means I don't get any phone calls, I don't get any notifications. I'm not gonna have like my wife popping up in a notification, being like, hey Dave, when you're home for dinner or whatever. I just wanna make sure that all of that, notification and phone calls and stuff don't interrupt the live stream. And so this one is executing that. Then I wait another 10 seconds and I send a YouTube message saying, where in the world are you joining from? Just to try and get people chatting and engage them. Another 5 seconds talking about on today's show, we're looking at, and you can see here, I'm pulling within here an actual variable of the Google Sheet. So this is Google Sheet, which I've called Sheet. The 0 is the sheet index. So I've only got one sheet in there. So that's the first one. And then remember I had a page called, or a spreadsheet called show, and then underscore B3. So if we go over here, we can go show, and B3 would be customizing buttons. And so what's happening here is I don't have to update this every week, because remember I said I put in the show, and when I'm planning a show, I go, okay, this is the title, which is the content. I'm gonna have 2 sections. This is what they're about. Those sections get copied into the run of show list, which gets pulled into on-screen graphics. But also, when I'm starting the show in this sequence, what it's doing is pulling in this text and saying, on today's show, we're looking at customizing buttons, and B4 is automation workflow, that kind of stuff. So that's going to change every week, depending when I've updated the spreadsheet. Then I've just got to add a chapter marker time code of pre-show just to get my 00 timestamp in there, because I'm starting to log the chapters as we go. And then this final variable, which will already be in there, just says on, and that's what's making this start and end. It's just visual feedback, showing it's red, showing that the show is active. Likewise, when we get to wrap, I'm sort of going in reverse of turning all these things off, turning all the fans back on, turning on notifications so I can hear what's been going on in my life. And then the show variable is now, it would be off, and that sort of turns off the whole thing. So that's an idea of how you can build in all of those things that you want to start at the beginning of a show, but you don't necessarily want to put into a run of show rehearsal. You don't want to be starting YouTube all the time. You don't want to be hitting record all the time when you're just trying to practice presentation and camera angles and all that kind of stuff. Cool. All right, I think, let me see here. Let me go over to my screen here. And this one, here we go. All right, I think that's about it. Let me just advance, I need to advance this one, and then we can get to the last one. Okay, Well, hopefully that was helpful. DJFlive.com is where you can go to get the version 5 of my profile layout, which has the ATEM and the Canopy DZ and all those presets that you can then take into the front end of it and make customizations to for your show to build it out for the workflow that you need. Until next week, take care, and I'll see you then. Bye.